Cool.
All
So
right.
super excited to have Jason on today. Mr. Silva, he's one of my favorite thought leaders online. Literally a media artist, a futurist, a philosopher, keynote speaker, and TV personality. You know, two of my favorite mediums in which you've expressed your awesome creativity up until this point is Shots of Awe, which has had over 13 million views through YouTube. And I know it goes gangbusters on Facebook as well. And then also Brain Games, which is an amazing show as well, which you've been hosting.
Thanks.
And literally Emmy-nominated host on that show, being aired in over 100 countries. So it's an absolute honor to have you on today. And I'm super excited to have a chat, discuss topics around how to increase our level of happiness and success in life. And just super grateful and looking forward to the interview today, man. So I know you've been working hard on Origins, the new TV show.
Yeah.
How's all that
Yeah.
been going?
Really good, man. The show is a concept created by Melody Sheep. If you're not familiar with Melody Sheep, he's a sort of composer, editor, filmmaker that got his start online doing these insane digital videos, similar to Shots of Awe, although he has his own style. But the point is, both him and I come from the internet, and he created this concept, sold it to the production company, and National Geographic bought into it. And then National Geographic was like, this would be a perfect follow-up for Brain Games for Jason.
Awesome.
And it's very much in line with the digital stuff I've been doing. So the show is about how the world became modern. We're sort of tracing modern technologies like medicine, like tool making, like language, and then going back to the origins of those things in a counterintuitive way. It's going to be a very exciting show. I'm stoked about it.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me on, by the way.
No worries, mate. It's an absolute honor to have you on today. So to kick off with a small bite-sized question, what is existentialism and how can it help people create more happiness and success in life? I know it's a big one, but if you can, go for it, man.
Of course. Well, existentialism, my understanding of it is a philosophy in which the individual for the first time really took responsibility for the actions of his own life. I think it came out of an increasingly secularized intellectual world where people were less dependent on living by the idea that God had a plan and that fate was sealed. And all of a sudden, Nietzsche came out and said God is dead, and Jean-Paul Sartre said because we can imagine we are free, and Albert Camus wrote The Stranger. And there's, the agony and the ecstasy of taking responsibility of your own life, right? The agony and the ecstasy that only you are in control of your ultimate destiny, and the sort of the tension of a lot of this, the tension of being mortal creatures that have divine ambitions, cosmic ambitions, and that's the essence of existentialism. We're gods and worms at the same time. What is the most heroic thing you can do as an existentialist? Do you rage against the dying of the light, or do you just kill yourself? And it's something I think is interesting to explore.
Well, people have gone both ways, right? Some people take it differently, but on topic in light of that question, I feel like to use that as a tool for more happiness and success makes perfect sense, because if someone can't take responsibility for where they're at in their life, they not only do they miss out on that full expression of themselves, but they can't actually control their destiny if they don't admit and say, yep, it's my responsibility where I end up. So you take on the so-called negative, which is, look, now I've got to step up and own my life, and it's not down to it's not down to destiny, it's not down to God, it's down to me. But I feel like that gives you control, because if you lose touch of that, then you don't actually have the ability to take control of your life.
Right.
I love it.
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Because in the past, before we had upward mobility, when we were just limited to different social caste systems, social classes, and you were kind of born into a certain place in the world and you never had any ambition to leave because it was God's will, because this was just the way of things. In a way, that was really limiting for an individual because there was no possible space for growth or self-empowerment. But at the same time, it also took the burden off your shoulders. It was God's will.
Yep.
The minute that there was the possibility of upward mobility, the minute that there was the existential idea that you could take control of your life, that means that the burden of creating your destiny, right, was on your own shoulders. And that means that if you fail, it was also on your own shoulders. And so that's when that happened in society, we also started to see the rise of schizophrenia and manic depression, which I think are the cautionary tales or the side effects of the burden of having to realize yourself and becoming your own God on your own shoulders. Like, if it doesn't work out, then it's your fault. If it doesn't work out, then it's somehow your crisis. And so the idea of like the manic depression, again, the personal midlife crisis, the nervous breakdown, all those themes come from being unable to realize yourself in the world and bearing that burden on yourself. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because people want to be successful, and I want to inspire people to take control. But when some people are at a certain point in their life where they don't have that emotional grit, that strength, that ownership to be able to take control, and it sees them fly in the opposite way, it's kind of like, when is someone ready to step up? So it's an interesting one.
Go ahead.
I was going to say,
go ahead.
I was going to move to the next step. So you go for it, man.
Let's do it. No, I was just going to say, I think that there's a lot of pressure with saying, you are the existential compass of your own life, figure it out. But then I like the Silicon Valley ethos that says, you know what? Yeah, take the existential torch, go make it. But you know what? It's okay if you fail. And if you fail fast. And so I think if people are given permission to fail at realizing their ambitions and making almost like a cosmic joke of it and having a sense of humor instead of a sense of dread and roll with the punches, I think that's a kind of healthy response that allows us to cushion ourselves against the perils of existentialism.
That's beautifully said, and
Thanks,
couldn't agree more. And to be honest with you, when I had my breakthrough in business and impact and my personal brand, it came at me creating that cushion. Because beforehand, I was struggling to break through because in my head had aligned so much pain with the idea that a micro failure could lead to a macro failure. What if I launched a Facebook ad campaign and my business didn't work? What if that was symbolic for my destiny not being this big, amazing thing I had in my head? And then as soon as I gave myself permission to fail and for it not to go exactly to plan and to detach away from the outcome on a short-term basis to secure the outcome I wanted on a long-term basis, I felt so much freer.
Beautifully said, man. I mean, I think at the end of the day, for every video that I've done that has resonated with people, there's another video that nobody watched and nobody clicked on. So you have to get comfortable with the idea that you're really you're expressing yourself primarily for you because you need that, right? You need to feel like this is what I need to feel expressed. And then you're throwing things against the wall and you're seeing what sticks, but don't do it. I mean, serve humanity, but don't do it for the approval of humanity.
Yeah. And that's a massive point. You just slipped in there right at the end. Serve things for yourself as well. So on your journey to success, because you are incredibly successful, so many hundreds of thousands or millions of people look up to you as a role model and a pinnacle of success in a way. What was the big breakthrough that came for you? What was the personal turning point that you had on your journey that allowed you to go to a new level of success in more, it could be seen in more of a materialistic way or more of like a public way? What was that turning point for you to put yourself up and, get that level of success?
Yeah, well, there's always been it's like all singularities. It's a million small steps that very quickly accrue and add up to what is perceived as a transformative moment.
Yes.
I was obsessed with making content my whole life. I was making videos and short films with my little brother since we were little kids. I was filming my salons in high school when I was philosophizing with my friends. I went to film school and double majored in film and philosophy. And when I graduated was a key moment in that Al Gore, the former vice president, was starting a television network called Current TV. And they were looking for submissions from citizen journalists to create this new user-generated content network. And I submitted a film to that. And the fact that I got hired full-time as a presenter on that network in 2005, just out of college, that was a big moment. It was like, oh my God, okay, so here I am. Now I'm in the world, I'm in LA, I'm meeting Al Gore, huge, right? But then in retrospect, that was a big shift, but it didn't make me a big successful star. It was a huge thing for a film student, but then that network never broke through. I spent 4.5 years in LA working for them, honing my skills, having a beautiful life, but making a very average salary and not really breaking through. I mean, I grew my network in LA, but I wasn't famous, you know what I mean? And so after 5 years on Current, I left. The network was sold to Al Jazeera. It no longer existed as an entity, Current TV. And all of a sudden, I was an unemployed former TV host who used to be on that Al Gore network that nobody watched. So you could argue that, wow, so I was a one-hit wonder and it wasn't even that big of a hit. And it was, I think, at that moment, that year, it was like 2011, that I started dating somebody and I fell in love with her. And I took a year off, basically, because I had left Current, no income. And I decided, you know what, it'll get figured out. And I lived out of my savings for that year. I traveled with her to Mexico and to India and to Europe and just experienced the flow of being in the present with somebody. And then all these creative ideas started bubbling up. And I kind of was like, you know, I think I want to get into like digital video content. Forget like TV for now. Let me do short form digital. I was reading a lot about innovation and creativity and exponential change. And I started doing these videos out of pocket, which eventually became Shots of Awe. But at first they were just out of pocket. And what happened is a couple, it was like the third one that I partnered with the right editor and the style really got honed in. And I was like, okay, this is game changing. Like this video cut in this way, these ideas, this is very now. And when I saw the response that it had online, I very quickly realized this is going to change my life. And within 6 months of that first video going viral, National Geographic hired me to host Brain Games. I partnered with Discovery Digital Networks to make these videos a regular thing for Shots of Awe. And all of a sudden, I had a weekly series on the internet with these videos, and I had a big TV show that got me an Emmy nomination. So I think it was really that year. You know, sometimes your first perceived victory, like Current, ends up not being such a big victory, but then it leads to the next victory.
Yeah, definitely. And that's such a cool story because it illustrates the truth behind what creates success, which is persistence and hard work and allowing it to pay off in the long term.
Persistence, bro.
Exactly.
I've been persistent. I mean, you could argue that even from graduating college, 2005 till 2016, yeah, I mean, it's 11 years of hardcore persistence, and only really since like 2013, the last 3-4 years, where it started to feel like, oh wow, this guy Jason is starting to make some noise, you know, which has been very gratifying, certainly. But I've been laying tiles, you know, laying bricks one by one for 11 years. So.
Yeah, well, since you were 11 or since you were young, so it's been a long time, right?
Yeah,
which is awesome. That's such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's, everyone sees Jason Silva now. He's on a pedestal, but Jason Silva's been working hard for many years at this point.
Yeah.
And it's
man.
Same with
and struggling, you know, for 11 years. I mean, I have dealt with anxiety, you know, has been a battle for me, a thing that, you know, it comes and goes and ebbs and flows, intermittent anxiety. You know, I struggle with existentialism. I'm terrified of finitude. I'm terrified of time passing. I'm terrified of mortality. You know, I've struggled with fear. You know, growing up in Venezuela and a country with so much crime. You have a kind of like PTSD. I'm like a hypervigilant person. I've tended to worry a lot, and these are things I've dealt with. But in a way, your neurosis is also your wisdom. You might argue that anxiety is probably what has made me so sharp in my career. Who knows, you know? But, you know, there's been demons that I've had to be dealt with.
I think everyone has that, and it's your ability just to be honest about it that I really admire. So thank you for being so honest. And, you know, on that journey, going through all those ebbs and flows, all those peaks and troughs, what do you think you've done to be able to pull yourself through those times of anxiety? Because I know a lot of people watching assume that it's just easy for you, or it's easy to have that confidence. And I know as well as you that I wake up on days just with my head in the sand, feeling nervous about what's to come. And I think that was really courageous of you just to talk about the truth. What have you been able to do to move through that? And
I discovered, I mean, I guess that's something that was always helpful, but I didn't have a name for it, was tapping into the flow state. In positive psychology, flow is described as a state of consciousness in which you feel your best and you perform your best.
Awesome.
So the athlete in the zone, the musician when he's in the pocket, you know, it's just like when you tap in, the writer when it's all just flowing through you, right?
It's so funny, Jason, because everything that we've gone through is just listing the questions and the points that I've got written
Yeah.
down. So we're just flow.
Yeah.
We're in a flow state right now, going through all the
Exactly.
topics. So keep going, man.
Exactly. So it was really rediscovering the science of flow, and there's an organization called the Flow Genome Project. Stephen
Awesome.
Kotler and Jamie Wheal are the founders. And in flow, when you're in flow, basically the self vanishes. What they call the doer and the seer merge. So the monkey mind goes quiet. You're completely embodied and immersed in what you're doing. So there's no time to think or worry. And it almost feels automatic. So the sense of self disappears and you're tapped in. The sense of time also disappears. So you enter this dimension of timelessness, which is highly gratifying. Effortlessness, everything is so easy and smooth. And this idea of information richness, like you're getting all this download of clarity. So the acronym is STIR: selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and information richness. And these guys, Jamie Wheal and Stephen Kotler, have figured out all these precursors and flow triggers.
Awesome.
And basically, when you're immersed in flow, imagine space and time, right? So space and time, like a chunk of space time. When you're experiencing flow for an hour, for 2 hours, for 3 hours, you're essentially out of your normal perception of reality. Like you're not there. You're there, but you're not there. It's like a vacation from yourself, from your incessant worrying mind. And it's like a purge or like a psychic car wash. And so when you experience flow, whether it's riding bicycles in Amsterdam or snorkeling, after smoking a joint or whatever it may be, when you pop out on the other side, you're like, wow, that last 6 hours, I was just out of space and out of time and out of mind. It's like getting a massage in the sense that even after the flow experience, it just leaves you feeling relaxed and it leaves you feeling better. And it leaves you feeling like, wow, for the last 6 hours, anxiety didn't even exist. And so the empowering element of that is realizing that there is an out, there is an escape from anxiety, and it can be physiologically triggered. And experientially triggered. So it's just realizing, just knowing that I can intervene to address these issues already makes me feel better. So even in my normal waking state, I just feel better because I know that I can always intervene to fix things.
You don't feel stuck. There's an opportunity to go into that flow state.
Always.
And when you're doing your videos, you can tell that I've never seen somebody in such an amazing flow when you go on those epic, beautiful, poetic rants about what you're passionate about. It's absolutely amazing. And I've seen it time and time again with all of your videos. How do you trigger those flow states? Could you give us like 3 keys to trying to, for the people watching, to get into that flow state?
Yeah, one of them is novelty. So it really helps to be in an interesting new place. Just novelty fires up your dopamine, increases pattern recognition, increases lateral thinking. Getting out in nature is really therapeutic. The Japanese call it forest bathing. So when you're kind of disconnected from the day-to-day and you're in a really natural environment, particularly one that's very vast, your brain mirrors where it's at. So vast environments open up vast thoughts. So novelty, natural, lush environments, and people you trust. And then you kind of get into that zone where you're walking and talking and thinking, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, I want to talk about this. And you're such a good mood, and then you start talking, and as you're speaking, you feel yourself flowing, and then that feeds back into how you're feeling, and you're off to the races.
That's really interesting because a lot of people feel like to get in a flow state, they need to get in a peak state, and it's like it's a very forced thing. It's like let's go, as opposed to relaxation, meditation, and just being in that nice relaxed state.
Exactly, you're absolutely right.
Awesome. Yeah. So on your journey, I know we spoke a little bit before about a setback that you encountered in the sense that you were on a trajectory moving upwards. You'd come out of all your study and all your hard work to get the host role, and then that didn't quite go according to plan, and you felt yourself in a position where you're almost at square one again in your mind temporarily. And you did get in that flow state because you did put yourself in a new environment and you traveled, and that's where all the ideas came from. So do you think that trusting in the future played a part in that? Did you think having a sense of knowing that you were going to get to where you wanted to go allowed yourself to be open to the ideas that came through?
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky enough to have my mother is an artist and a poet and a teacher, and she always was like, just do what you love and the money will follow. The only cardinal rule is you have to be kind. And she just, I'm not religious, but I believe in my mother. And so when my mother says everything's going to be okay, I just believe her, And so that gave me, I guess, faith. For somebody that professes to be secular, there was a leap of faith in just believing it was going to work out and trusting my creativity and my intuition.
That's really interesting, Jason, because I recently interviewed Dr. John Demartini, and he was telling me about the story. Because are you familiar with Dr. John Demartini? No, he's a thought leader, and he's a psychologist, kind of like an expert on the mind, a really cool guy. And he was on the show The Secret. Have you seen that movie? Yeah, it's kind of law of attraction sort of stuff. Really awesome guy. And he's been doing this for like 35 years, traveling around the world, delivering keynotes and presentations. Really awesome guy, genuine, heart-centered. But he was talking about when he was 7 years old, he was told he was never going to be able to read or write or amount to anything. And he went on this massive down. He left school, he became a surfer, grew a beard, almost died from poisoning, camping in Hawaii, and then ended up going home to his parents after he had this enlightening experience at a seminar with a health guru. And he went home and he was speaking to his parents and he wanted to make this massive change in his life. But the interesting thing was that all of a sudden he went in this massive state of depression and didn't feel like things were going to move forwards. And it wasn't until his mother told him that it doesn't matter what you do, John, I'm going to love you no matter what, that he had this burst of a vision coming to him to speak in front of millions of people. So it's funny that love enabled expression, love enabled a vision to come forth. And then same with what you just said there. It's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, man, I couldn't have said it better myself, man. There's just, when you feel loved and you feel supported, you realize that that's all that really matters.
So true. I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I know you speak a lot about cognitive ecstasy.
Yeah,
and in this world, in this world today, where there are people that are very serious in their pursuit, whether it's in their career, serious in their, the way they dedicate themselves to health, there's a lot of seriousness going on and a lot of focus going on. What do you think people have to do in order to fully express and open up the opportunity for cognitive ecstasy? And what is cognitive ecstasy?
Michael Pollan says memory is the enemy of wonder. So I think that we need to find a way to overcome the been there's and seen that's of the adult mind, that hedonic adaptation that makes us prejudge every experience because we feel like we already know what it's going to be. Frog jumping to the conclusion instead of being present. And so it's really, if we're able to tap into a sense of first sight unencumbered by knowingness, that we're able to tap into that exhilaration that the child feels when he marvels at something he's never seen before. And so
that was one of my favorite videos, by the way, with you and the baby, just watching the baby's eyes go like this when you were talking to it. And it was just amazed.
I know that video was insane, but think of seeing the world the way that baby sees it. And so, I think that getting to that state requires, again, exposure to jarring novelty so that it can shake you out of your capacity to prejudge an experience. Something closer to like raw and direct experience. Meditation seems to work. Mindfulness seems to work. Yoga seems to work. People who use cannabis for spiritual purposes profess that it's very good for that as well. Snorkeling, any immersive experience, honestly, immersion seems to do it because it subsumes you in another reality very quickly.
It's funny because I feel like you've got an association with snorkeling and joints. It's the second time you spoke about marijuana and snorkeling.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Jason. Well, look, I support marijuana legalization for sure. I think it's a very benign and extremely useful substance for a variety of medical ailments. Certainly in a world that feels that people should be able to have a drink if they want to, they should be able to have a joint as well. But additionally, I think that in concert with things like snorkeling or hiking, a lot of great writing has been done about its capacity to intensify immersive experiences. Certainly Michael Pollan, who wrote The Omnivore's Dilemma, has written extensively about this in his book, The Botany of Desire.
Beautiful.
I went snorkeling in Mexico recently, and I remember swimming under mangrove trees in lush turquoise water, and I just felt like I was like inside of poetry. It was like swimming through poetry, and it was just totally arresting and magnificent.
Awesome. So cognitive ecstasy is your ability to properly feel, which comes from your ability to open the mind and pause time and live in that moment.
Living in a continuous state of understanding, like basking in astonishment. That's cognitive ecstasy.
And there are times and states where I go into that place, and there are also times and states where I neglect the opportunity to feel that way. But when I am in that state, everything is wondrous. Everything is amazing. I look at things that are simple as like a glass of water, and I'm just like, we drink water to fuel our body, and I just get excited. And I'm like, the sun actually powers the earth. What is the universe? And it gets me excited, and it gets me in a state where nothing else matters. I just love it. So I would love to know, because and like we said before, it's almost like the more you know, the more you open yourself up to the reality that life is and you are mortal, and that you understand the universe more, which makes you realize that there's more that you don't know. So it's like the more information that you have and the more that your map of reality expands, the more you realize how large that reality is. I want to know, as someone who's studied so much innovation and technology and, future, so much about the future and life, what do you spend your time thinking about?
There's a great line that says, somewhere something incredible is waiting to be known. And there's another line that says, the world is full of magic things patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper. So I think about my own thinking. I think about how much more there is that I don't know about. I get excited at the idea of stumbling down a rabbit hole. Where is the next rabbit hole for me? Awesome. And if I ever want to just blow my mind for fun, I just Google Eric Davis and I read whatever new stuff he's published. Eric Davis with a K, he's the author of Technosis, and he's one of my intellectual heroes.
Yeah, so I was going to ask a question in a minute saying, who do you look up to the most? So I'm going to assume that's Eric Davis.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing.
Awesome. So I've got a bit of an interesting question for you. If you were to be reborn again in a completely different area of the world, not the same upbringing, with different parents, God forbid, because I know how much you love your mum. But let's say you did, and you got to take back 3 pieces of advice to your newborn self to live and start life with. What would those 3 pieces of advice be, and why?
The 3 pieces of advice that I would give myself? I'd probably echo some of what I heard from my mom. You've got to be kind. You've got to be kind. Be willing to be ridiculed. Like be willing to put it all out there.
Awesome.
And trust.
Faith in the process. Faith in the outcome.
Trust, surrender.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Love that. All right, this is a little bit of an interesting one. What do you think was the key behind your viral videos? Because I know there's a lot of people watching that may be entrepreneurial as well, or trying to cast their own expressions around the world. If you could give any pieces of advice to help a video go viral, even if it's technical, this length of time.
I think that, I would say that don't waste time trying to figure out how to make your video viral. I say try to make your content as good as it can be.
Beautiful.
But not try to follow some formula for virality. Just try to figure out how to impact through the content. So if it's powerful and infectious and well done and beautiful and honest and authentic, then people will share it. But like to try to figure out like tricks and hacks for virality feels like cheating.
You're avoiding the very essence of what creates a viral video.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Thank you.
Exactly.
All right, so this is a bit of a light-hearted question. You've been on TV for a while now, and I know there's a lot of takes and behind the scenes. What's the funniest moment that you've had on Brain Games so far? Tell us about like an experience that was just a bit interesting.
Yeah. Well, we did some great hidden camera experiments to show conformity on the show.
Sure.
We were in this like public forum area in Vegas. We set up hidden cameras and we had some producers create like a line of people standing in line. There was no sign. There was no instruction. It didn't say what the line was for. Just in the middle, people just started standing in line. We started with 3. And then strangers that were walking around eventually started mimicking and standing behind the line, even though there was no indication of what the line was for or what was, nothing. And eventually there was 50 people standing in line. This is an example of like blind conformity without thought.
Yeah.
There was no instruction. There was no sign that anything was going to happen. But people eventually just stood in line for an indefinite period of time for no reason whatsoever, just because they saw other people standing in line. How ridiculous is that?
It's funny, but it's kind of sad at the same time.
Very sad. It's incredibly depressing. Incredibly depressing.
Well, I took humor out of that, so thank you.
Right.
So I know that one of my favorite Facebook Lives you've done, Jason, and we're about to wrap it up. I appreciate the time you spent already on this interview. It's been awesome.
Sure.
I know Neil deGrasse, you did a very interesting Facebook Live with Neil deGrasse, and I could sense frustration coming from your end because there was a difference in opinions on death, but you both had an incredible, Neil deGrasse and yourself, you guys are both two of my favorite thought leaders with your ability to...
Thanks, bro.
No worries at all. Equally as passionate, just different views in some things, but then agreeing views in some things. Given that Neil's like also a very big hero of mine alongside yourself, and one of my favorite video of yours, by the way, is the existential bummer. And one of the questions I was going to ask is, because I also grew up fearing death I used to just burst out in tears, and I could not get my head around this idea that one day I'm just never going to be here again, ever. Just gone, vanished. This thing that is my entire existence, gone. And I would just start crying all the time. And I went through this period of doing this for about 3 months in my teenage years. But your view, obviously, is that should make you want to, maximize life more and love life more and hold harder and live stronger. What would you say in relation to Neil deGrasse's view on death, in which he feels some sense of closure at the idea that he is part of the universe? After having that conversation, did it shift your view at all, or to open your mind at all, or same way?
I just, the poetry of being part of the universe is still an experience that can only be had by a conscious entity.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a meaningless idea if there's no observer to contemplate that idea, right? Like, if a tree falls and nobody hears it, does it make a sound? Like, in a way, outside of our observation, things don't really exist as far as our subjectivity is concerned. And so what scares me about death is that it's a negation of self. But it's a negation of a perceiving consciousness. And I actually find it unimaginable. And so it's like a fucking black hole, I just can't.
Yeah. So do you feel like that's had some impact on your level of success up until this point?
The urgency? I mean, yeah, but like, I kind of also feel like I wanted access to the smartest minds in the world, so that when we figure out a way to hack this thing and become immortal, that I can be like up in the front of the line with those guys. Like, having direct access to Ray Kurzweil and others, in a way, it's a survival mechanism. We're all trying to impress the computer model of excellence in the sky,
You can't just say we're all trying, like, you can't put everyone else in that category. That is phenomenal. I've never heard a human being say that and literally mean that in a serious way, which is amazing, because it's opened my mind to an idea just then. But
I really do think that the reason the Silicon Valley has made it its next project to hack death is because these people are like, well, we've already achieved the pinnacle of what's possible financially. Now we need to live indefinitely. And that's why all those guys, from Peter Thiel to Larry Page, they're all investing in longevity companies. I mean, hacking mortality is the next hackable space. And I want a seat at the table, man. I want on the front row seat to humanity 3.0, like we need to engender our own godhood. This is our cosmic destiny.
Do you believe it's a beneficial tool to be reminded of death?
For some, and for others, it actually makes them more violent.
Sure.
It's called terror management theory. Some people, when reminded of death, extend kindness and compassion to others. And some people, when reminded of death, are more violent and intolerant towards others. There's a documentary called Flight from Death, which explores these ideas by Ernest Becker. Just check it out.
When I was in my teenage years, when I was mentioning that period of 3 months going through that fear of death, at the same point in time was when I was brainstorming as well. How do I stick this thing out? How do we keep it going? Surely in the next 100 years I can survive, and there will be some kind of invention that keeps me here. And that's what allowed me to claw and hold on at that point. And then as I got through time, I'm trying to do my best to convince myself that, you know what, everything's going to be okay. And, you know, it's all part of life. But at the end of the day, you're right. When you lose consciousness, and, you know, it's gone forever, which is devastating. So
yeah, I think it's important to have that battle happen, but at the same time to be able to put it in the background and focus on the here and now too.
And be present, sure. So on a lighter note, what are you most excited about? To wrap up the interview today, what are you most excited about in your life right now, Jason?
I'm really excited. I'm excited that my speaking career has really taken off. I'm excited that more and more I can really say yes to the opportunities that will bring me in front of the audience where I can make my most impact and not just feel like I have to say yes to everything. I'm also excited by being able to say no to stuff that doesn't feel right. Awesome. Same with my TV projects. I'm really excited about Origins, but I'm also excited about, you know, being able to say no to things that don't feel right, so that increasingly I can create the circumstances in my life that foster flourishing. Awesome. Human flourishing and creativity for myself, because he who is self-satisfied will respond positively towards others. And there's that quote that says, ask not what the world needs, ask instead what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive.
Boom. What a way to wrap things up. You've been absolutely amazing. I wish you the best of luck with Origins. Thank you so much for being on today. You deserve all the success that's come, because as we spoke about, it's a compilation of everything you've done up until this point and the hard work that you've put in and your heart and love. And I know that when you open yourself up more by expressing yourself, you also open yourself up to criticism, like you said, which you now deserve everything that's come to you. So best of luck with Origins. I know you don't need it. It's going to crush it. And it's been amazing speaking to you today. So thank you so much. Love your work. Keep being amazing.
Thanks, bro. Talk to you soon, man. Thanks a lot. Good luck. See you soon. I'll be in Australia in November for some talks, so keep an eye on my social media for that.
Man, if you are anywhere close, I will fly, even if it's for 15 minutes, to have a quick chat.
No, I'm gonna keynote at Wired for Wonder in November. It'll be in Melbourne and Sydney.
Amazing. If you could spare like 15 minutes to catch up, I would have an absolute blast.
Sure, man.
It'd be amazing.
Sure, we'll do it.
Sounds awesome. We'll stay in contact. Thank you so much for your time, and love your work. Love you as a person. Have an awesome one, and good luck on your keynote on Saturday.
Thank you, my friend. Talk to you soon.
See you, Jason. Take care, mate. Bye.